Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys had a great weekend. We're going to jump right into our lesson for today. Over the next couple of days and throughout this week, we will read a few literary texts about travels and adventures. Our focus this week is summarizing literary text. And we are working through that because we are getting ready to start our next novel study next week. And this will be in preparation for that novel study. So like I said, over the next couple of days, we'll be looking at summarizing literary text. Today's story is called The Legend of Hua Mulan. You may have seen this movie before. There is a newer one that is coming out, I believe, fairly soon. So your goal for today, after you finish the lesson or watch the recorded lesson that I have posted here, read through this information again, and we will practice summarizing them. You will also complete a graphic organizer. I'm just going to have you do one each day and share it with me each day, since last week got a little bit crazy with trying to find the other one in your Google Drive, whatever happened. So we'll complete the graphic organizer. And then there is a summary assignment that goes with it, and you'll use your graphic organizer to complete that summary. So before we begin, I want you to think about some other stories that you have read or you have heard. For example, the Little Red Riding Hood is another well-known tale. And think about what you already know about Little Red Riding Hood. Think about the characters, think about the setting, and think about what actually happens. Also, I want you to think about the theme or the lesson that you can learn from that short story or that tale. So again, our focus this week is on making summaries or summarizing text. And summaries usually include the characters, the settings, and important events. And they should not include minor details. For example, like in Little Red Riding Hood, I don't really need to know what type of shoes she was wearing, just the meat of the story, the most important pieces that you can remember or recall from a story. And then also we're going to include the story's theme. So think about that could be the message or the life lesson that the story teaches you. So for example, a theme could possibly be, if at first you don't succeed, keep trying, or look before you leap, something like that. So in thinking again about Little Red Riding Hood, I just want to help you identify the theme before we jump into today's story, because theme can often be a little bit tricky, and it's been a while since we have discussed it. In Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf who was dressed as the grandmother tricked Little Red Riding Hood. In my summary, I'd include a sentence about how this fairy tale teaches that appearance can be deceiving. So just so you have that in the back of your mind as you're listening to this story today, and how we will also include the theme in our summary. All right, let's take a look at the learning target. Summarizing a literary text will help you to identify important characters, events, details, and themes in the text. When you summarize a story or drama, you briefly retell the important details in your own words. A good summary will include the main character, settings, events, and themes of the story. Read the story below, identify the important details, ask yourself which details you would include if you were retelling this story to a friend. So think, if they've never heard it before, what in details would you want to include? The Legend of Hua Mulan. Beloved daughter, said the old man, do not do this. The young woman shook her head. You are too old to serve. My brother is but a child. I am the only one fit to fight. And so she put on men's clothing, left her village, and joined the army. At first, the soldiers teased her. The boy is so short. No hair on his face. No strength in those arms. And all they said was true, but she was stubborn and cunning. Her will and her wits won their respect. Soon the soldiers recognized her bravery and her brilliance in battle. For 12 years, she fought alongside the men, but then the war ended and the soldiers brought her home. After greeting her family, she disappeared into their house. Shortly, a woman in a dress emerged. "Who are you?" asked the soldiers. "Where is our fighter?" "I am Hua Mulan," she said, "and you are my brothers in arms." All was silent. Then one soldier smiled. Others joined him, and then the army let loose a cheer like none the village would ever hear again. Now I want you to imagine you are retelling this story to a friend. Think about the most important details. Think about who, what, where, when, and why when you are creating your summary. First, we're going to create our graphic organizer together, and that will help us form our summary. You will need to open up the graphic organizer, make a copy. Make sure to double click in the text box or the title box. When you double click there, you should be able to type your name. First and last name is most helpful, and then you can share it back with me by click and share, type in Laura Akers. My email should pop up, and then click send, so that way I can see all of your awesome work. And then, of course, again, you can always make it bigger if you need to with the zoom button. I think you guys have gotten pretty good at this. You can change the font, add bullet points, whatever you need to do. Just follow along and then add in the details as we go through character settings. Who tells the story has already been put in for us, and then we'll include our important events and our theme. So in thinking about your graphic organizer, you may need to go back and forth to remember who was in the story, the setting, and all of the events. So I can go ahead and put, we have Mulan, who happens to be the daughter. You see the soldiers are mentioned, and as well as the father is mentioned too. And it also mentions her brother being too young, but I don't think he's very much a main character because he's not necessarily part of why she goes and serves to fight. So in your characters, put Mulan, her father, and then soldiers. Moving on to setting. The setting appears to be in Mulan's village and with the army. Make sure that you include both of those settings because it begins in the village and then next to the army together. Who tells the story? That happens to be a third person or a narrator. Because they refer to Mulan, they use her name. It's told in third person. And then now we're ready for our important events. I am going to include my bullet points to help me with this part. So when you're looking at the important events, let's start from the very beginning when and we talked about events a lot last week. Actually think about what is happening. And in those first paragraphs, it's really talking about how old she is or how old the father is and how he is too old to serve. The brother is too young because typically the men would then fight in the army. And then it mentions how she feels that she's the only fit one to go into the army. So I would think one of the very first important details is Mulan says that she is the only one in her family who is able to fight. Go ahead and include that detail in your important events. All right, let's take a look at the rest of that paragraph. And so she put on men's clothing and left her village and joined the army. So there's another event of her actions of what she's actually doing. She puts on men's clothing and joins the army. So that would be another event that just happened. All right, in the next paragraph, it talks about how the soldiers are teasing her based on what she looks like. But eventually she uses her will and her wits to win their respect, and then they actually start to recognize her for her bravery and her brilliance in the battle. So to include that, In your next detail, at first soldiers tease her, but she earns their respect by being brave. All right, when we go down to the next paragraph, it says for 12 years she fought alongside men, and then they returned home and then realized that she was actually a girl or a woman. She was not actually a man because she comes back out dressed as a woman wearing a dress. So next detail, after 12 years, Mulan returns home with the soldiers and reveals she is a woman. And of course, their reaction was quite interesting. Once the soldiers realized who she was, they asked who she was. They were a little bit quiet at first, and then they all smiled and cheered for her. So the soldiers are surprised at first, but then they cheer. So after reading through it, if you need to read through one more time, I want you to think about the theme or the message that you can take away from this short story. And think about how her appearance was one way, but people thought that only men should fight in the army. And then she proved herself to be strong and brave, just like they were. So, in thinking of the message or the theme of this story, people should be judged by their actions, not by whether they are male or female, because men and women can do things very much equally and should be treated that way. Once you complete your graphic organizer, please make sure you have already shared it with me. Share it with me if you haven't yet. And then the final step to this is taking all this information and you are going to complete your summary. Use your graphic organizer to make your summary. Please make sure to include, you need the characters, the setting, the important events, and the theme. Of course, you can take those events and make them a little bit shorter as well. So that way you have all the information that you need, but you're not exactly having to state everything over again. So you can take that information and then shorten it up just a bit more as well. So in order to do that, please click on the link here. It will take you to the assignment page, the Legend of Mulan summary. Write a summary of the short story, The Legend of Mulan. Be sure to include the character settings, important events, and the theme of the story. Your summary should include at least 5 complete sentences. If you have any questions, let me know and have a great day.